History remembers the facts, but what about the phantoms that refuse to be forgotten? This is the Common Historian. I'm Jeremy, and tonight, Paul Dulski of Haunted Vermont is here. And with National Missing Children's Day just a few days ago, we're going to talk about some of Vermont's missing children cases. And welcome, Paul.
Thank you for helping me. If we would have met in person. My vehicle had other workaround to not make that happen. But yeah, so anyway, we don't discuss about that because I'm about ready
Maybe next
to.
year.
Yeah,
Maybe
well,
next.
I talked to Jeff and I felt so bad. Like I was just like, dude, I don't even know what to say to this. Like I just blame my car for all I said, and I was just like, break, man. I just didn't want to risk it.
Yeah.
And he said, "No worries, man. He's sorry for the trouble, and that maybe next year. So hopefully next year will be better."
Yeah, hopefully. I really enjoyed it, the Vermont Horror and Sci-Fi Fantasy Expo. So that was a great 2 days and can't wait till next year.
Definitely.
So I guess we can dive right in. We wanted to chat about some of the missing children or missing in Vermont tonight. I don't think many people have heard of Victoria Ploof. Who was she? Can you give me a little overview on her?
So Victoria Proof was about 3 years old. She disappeared on October 14th, 1879, in Jay, Vermont. And basically, what happened with her is their family just bought this new home in Jay, and they were trying to basically break into it. And what I mean by break into it is just get their foot through the door, maybe fix a couple things here and there. But what was interesting is how she disappeared. And just to give a little bit more of a clear understanding here, where their house was around some sort of mountain, they didn't really describe what mountain they were around. But as far as I'm aware, Gay Vermont is wooded. I wouldn't say rural maybe, but it is at the same time because Hermie is what.
I grew up in Montgomery, which is right next to Jay. So I
Yeah.
have a pretty good idea.
Yeah, so you can vouch on this too a little bit too,
Yeah,
where how do I even want to say how rugged too? Because you would know more than I would, because I only
yeah,
lived up in Richford.
it's very mountainous. I lived actually going up the road to Jay Peak. And then the town of Jay is at pretty much the top or just as you're going on the other side. So it's still decently rural and mountain wooded.
Yeah, that would be a good word. Tree galore, basically, is the way I talked about the Northern Kingdom.
Yeah.
So basically, just picture that type of surrounding for this house. And what happened was the father, Michael Bluff, had three boys and Victory. She was the only girl and the youngest, if I recall this as well. So he had bought a new house. He was erecting their home. And on this particular day, the brothers had went into the path that was near the house because they wanted to gather some moss, which I think all of us kids wanted to go out into the woods anyway and gather sticks, stones, maybe moss too, because we were kids. We liked to collect weird things. Oh, I know. Anyway,
Yeah.
so what happened was Victory wanted to go with her brothers, and they noticed that she was picking up peach nuts. And at one point, the youngest brother scolded Victory for following them and basically told her to return home. So, assuming Victory were just going to be home because they weren't that far from the house, they basically turned around and continued onward to collect their moth. Basically, by the time the brothers returned, Victory never returned back to the house. So that's where the search basically started. And to this day, nobody really knows what happened between that distance of however far they were from this path to the home, of how she would manage to just poof disappear. So there's that. And
Yeah.
it's just weird because At first, there wasn't much newspapers going around, but as you patiently wait for newspapers.com and stuff like that to update, I ended up getting some more clues of what kind of took place involving investigation. So supposedly Victory was bareheaded and barefoot, meaning she wasn't wearing a hat or
Yeah.
any shoes or socks. They found bear tracks nearby, which is interesting because I know it's missing. We're talking about the missing, but we can go into some other things about these bear tracks in a minute. But they supposedly found bear tracks nearby, so that kind of made them think maybe it was a bear. But if a bear came to get Victory, they swore that they would hear Victory cry for help, which they never did. There was nothing, no sounds at all. Basically, there were no screams or nothing. And they also mentioned that they would have noticed blood or pieces of clothing, which is fair, especially if the bear was attacked in Victory. But as small as she was, a bear could maybe have easily have grabbed her by, let's just say, a shirt and dragged her. But then again, that's where the whole screaming could have been, but hence there wasn't, and everything else. Which, yeah, I can definitely agree with the fact that if a bear were to have bitten Victory, yeah, there would have been blood. Totally.
Yeah, there would have been blood.
The other thing that they mentioned real quick is they would have noticed any sort of disposure, disposed of kind of thing, drag marks as well. But what's odd is somehow, and they never quite said it in the newspaper, but somehow they came to a suspicion that it was the fact of her being disposed of maybe by her own father and that she was either stolen or murdered. But however, to finish Victory off is basically, and I'm not trying to say that as a pun, but it was just like there was no motive ever mentioned. There was no suspicion on anybody.
Yeah, that's
And
weird. Um,
yeah. And then the final thing that they made a note of was due to being barefoot, it doesn't seem possible that she would have climbed the steep mountain that was nearby.
that sounds interesting. So did they ever close the case,
As far as
or is
I'm
it still
aware,
it just
it's
kind of
fine. Yeah, if it is
stood
open,
left? And I can tell you that I've never heard until I was researching, and you had mentioned it on in our chat. I grew up in Montgomery, and I had never heard of this case.
this was 1879.
Yeah, it was a long time before.
And I'd never heard of it either. I only stumbled upon it thanks to the missing 411 because
Yeah,
he did actually make a video based on it. And I was just like, what? So, of course, I had to go and do
go
my
and
own
research
thing.
some more. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, could those bear tracks been something else other than a bear?
And that's exactly
Just
what.
thinking of my cryptid mind.
Yeah, what's funny is when we start talking cryptids, and I guess we can put a pause on the missing people for a minute because I
Yeah.
think this fits perfect for a couple other things that would fit perfect with the bear tracks. Anyway, so back in, I don't have the note pulled up in front of me, so I apologize for this, but I know it was like October or November of around the same time frame, like 1879 maybe or something like that. It was like around the same neighborhood, like between the 1970s, maybe 1990s or 1890s. Sorry, I'm getting further ahead than what I want to be. Anyway, there's a newspaper clipping from that time period about the 200 down in Punell or West Townsend or something like that. Anyway, it's south of Vermont, basically, for people
Yeah,
that
Southern
want to
Vermont.
know. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's known for our Bennington Triangle stuff and just every other kind of bizarre thing you can kind of think of. But anyway, what sparked my interest about D200 is that they claim to have seen this wild man or Bigfoot or Sasquatch. I want to say wild man because of the time frame of the 1800, basically late 1800s. But they shot at it they shot at this thing, and they got and the reason why they shot at it is because it started to charge at them. So would that be what we know or what we call today as the bluff chart? Possibly. Or was it actually physically trying to go after these hunters? I don't know. But either way, they shot at the creature or the wild man and basically dropped their rifles and ran out of the woods. But they wanted to also make a search party to go back into the woods to try to find this wild man. Now, I don't know if they ever did. I cannot find anything to vouch that a party actually took place, but that's what I have for this. Now, what I find interesting too is they they went into a newspaper aspect. People when interviewing these hunters, they were like, "What about a bear?" And basically, there here we go again with bear tracks again and stuff like that. Now, let's fast forward, Jeremy. You probably know this case pretty well too. So let's go to November. I always say 24th because I can't always rely on certain sources because let's be fair. Sometimes some sources like newspapers or whatever, they'll maybe get the day wrong by maybe a day or something. Either
Yeah,
way, give or take, right?
yeah.
So I can tell you flat out that it was November 23rd when they declared Carl Herrick dead. So I just want to ask real quick, are you familiar with Carl Herrick?
I've heard of him, but I have not overly familiar.
So Carl Herrick was one of the original, you could say, missing people from down in the South Bennington, West Townsend area around Pownell too. And what I find fascinating about this is if we go back to what I just mentioned about the two hunters from that same area where they
Yeah.
shot at him. So it makes me wonder at the time frame now with Carl, which I should say is November 23rd, 1943, Carl went out hunting and he never came back out of the woods. His brother, cousin, Harry or Henry. I might be getting two stories mixed up, so I apologize for this. I want to say Harry or maybe, but or Henry, sorry, he came out of the woods and basically started to do the search party for Carl because what happened and et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, like a couple days later, they found his body and it was the most bizarre scene possible. His rifle was leaning up against a tree and his body was 70 feet from his rifle that was leaning up on the woods or and on the tree. But he was on the ground with scratches all over him. His whole body was blackened, like as if something just took out his wife. Now, interesting enough, the newspaper article, when it came out, the newspaper read, Hunter squeezed to death by a bear hug. Now, I know I don't hunt. I don't know if you hunt or
I
did,
don't either.
but if I was a hunter, and what to say for the example here, that if a bear were charging at me, I'm going to shoot it and I'm going to keep my gun because that doesn't mean that it's dead. So there's no way I'm going to put it against a tree and think it's dead.
No.
So what happened to Carl? Now, there's actually a death certificate of Carl, and it even says on his cause of death that he had punctured his lungs, like broken ribs and stuff like that, and something else I can't remember the medical term. But down below all this, it literally says attacked by bear. But so getting back to the bear track too is when they found the site as well, they found bear tracks around the area.
So they just assumed it was a bear.
So the way I'm looking at this is because let's go back to those 200 real quick. Both of these stories relate to the same area, the same surrounding of these woods. They did say what name the mountain was that these hunters were around, but again, I can't think, so I apologize for that. But there's too many things to remember here, people.
Yeah.
So forgive me. But I tried looking this up. It's a mountain that is used for turkey hunting. There's just I can at least say that. But it looks more like this mountain is around a tourist area. So when I was trying to look into where this possible hunting spot could be, if you're around a tourist spot too, I don't know. That sounds weird enough as it is too.
Yeah. So I know we've talked about the Bennington Triangle, which I think is near what are talking about
Correct.
currently. Now, I think another one was Paul, is it Jepson's
Yeah.
disappearance?
Yeah.
Can you tell me what happened there?
Yeah, so Paul Jepson disappeared October 13th of 1950, and he was like 8 years old, which is young for a kid. Sorry, October 12th. I'm thinking of the newspaper article that literally came out the next following day from him being disappeared. That's how quick back then, sometimes when a missing person or a missing child went missing, that's how quick sometimes they literally got that information out. Except
Yeah.
for the one other case that we may be talking about, with that the whole new ball game in itself too. But anyway, for Paul here, the idea of Paul was he was last seen around his mother's truck because his mother was at the farm attending to the pigs while the dad was off doing, I'm assuming, his job, which was he was the part of the Bennington Treasury group or whatever you want to call it. So he wasn't really technically there. Now, somehow, between the time of her attending the pigs to going back to the pickup truck, Paul was gone, nowhere to be found. Almost as if he vanished from the family pickup truck, from the area that they were, the dump, or because I guess the dump was like right around the farm of where these pigs were that were being attended. Now, real quick, before I go any further, there there's a lot of talk about how it was the family murdered Paul and just threw him to the pigs or the dump, basically. But there's actually a newspaper article that basically clarifies that the authorities, with bloodhounds and everything, went to the dump and the surrounding area where the mother was attending the pigs, and they found no trace at all. So I just want to clear that right out of the way.
Yeah.
So Paul had vanished without a trace. Next thing, they had called for a search party. There was bloodhounds involved. There was sheriff. There was like everything you can possibly think of for a search and rescue happened with Paul. They even tried like helicopters and stuff, but to no avail. They tried to see if the bloodhounds could pick up a scent, which they did, but it stopped at a road between Chapel and East Road around Bennington area. But that kind of basically led to them possibly thinking that it was an abduction by another motorist or something. But it gets more weirder with the dad coming in and basically trying to say that Paul wasn't really like a normal kid. He kind of wandered a lot. He had some disabilities. He was handicapped. So he was always, as he quoted in the newspaper article, and I quote, careless of autos and made them slow down because he just liked to wander. So they feared that he was struck by a vehicle. Therefore, the person just picked him up and basically drove away because they just wanted to bring him to a hospital or something with the idea, or just they wanted to get rid of the body because they didn't want to just be caught because they hit a kid or something. But they never mention that they found blood.
Yeah.
So I don't know how to take that. Maybe he was abducted, and because how else would he have vanished? With just say for the example here. Now, Paul was 4 feet 5 inches. He was about 65 pounds, and he had white brown hair, dark brown eyes. He was last seen with brown overalls, a white tan jacket with buttons over a red sweater. He had brown shoes, a dark blue knitted cap, maroon striped stocking too. And then basically it just goes into the fact that the search failed, the bloodhounds failed because they always kept failing at losing the descent of Paul, and there was no evidence to really back up to what had really happened to Paul of the whole vanishing out of a pickup. Now, unfortunately, some suspected, like I mentioned, that he had met the demise of his own parents and was dinner for the pigs, but since they got there so fast, they would have found that evidence, I feel like. Even though you
Yeah,
hear big pigs, they devour everything, but there still would have been that evidence of the clothing and the blood, no matter what.
yeah.
Anyway, what do I know? Sometimes I was struck by the vehicle, kind of makes sense, but I was just saying, where's the blood then? Unless he somehow magically cleaned it up and drove away. Find that really hard to believe. I could definitely see maybe being kidnapped by a motorist, for sure, especially if the scent ended at the road, which I don't want.
No sense to me.
And what makes it even odder, going to a different case real quick, is Paula Weldon disappeared almost on the same exact road as Paul Jepson did as well.
Oh,
So, yeah, very
mm,
weird. Lastly, I can say for Paul Jepson is that the boy's father also told the Albany Times Union newspaper that there was like an eerie feeling about the Bennington Triangle where he believed that the lure of the mountains is what drew Paul to become missing because apparently Paul had talked nothing else for days before leading up to being disappeared. So I don't know what that means. I just
yeah.
I know that apparently that seemed to be a weird factor into another case that I supposedly heard. But again, I can't find anything to back up the claim, so I don't know where this source was found from this other particular case, which was Henry McDowell. If you know who that is, if not, I'll just share real quick. So, Henry McDowell was a worker from the Glastonbury logging company at the time before it went out of business because they literally ran out of trees, basically. But Henry McDowell became crazy and insane to the point where one day he had flipped out on a coworker and killed this coworker with a rock. He was arrested and was going to be sent to Waterbury Asylum, but he never made it to the Waterbury Asylum because somehow he had escaped the transit bus or just somehow escaped prior to being transferred to Waterbury Asylum. Now, what I find that interesting because you would think because of where Glastonbury is and Bennington, it's right near Brattleboro. I almost thought Brattleboro, the insane asylum there, was where he would go, but it was actually Waterbury Asylum, which is further, I thought. But hey, again,
Meh.
what do I know?
Yeah, yeah. And I think the what were you saying?
Oh, I'm just gonna end it real quick by saying, but somewhere within this Henry McDowell thing is supposedly Henry McDowell talked about how he was being lured into the mountains as well. But I
Oh,
can't find proof of that either.
yeah. And the last case that I wanted to bring up was Martha Jeanette Jones.
Oh yes, Martha Jeanette Jones.
She was
So
missing for a full month, I think, before they even reported her missing, from what I've read.
yeah, what do you know? And I can help you fill in the
Oh,
blank.
that's
What do
about
you
all I
got?
really know. I don't know a huge amount. I just saw that I remember from when I was reading that she was missing for a full month before anyone reported. I was just curious how that happened. that you don't
Yeah,
report
that's
someone missing.
what I said too. Yeah, so first off, this is a great way to say, oh, by the way, a couple things maybe. Let me see here real quick. So there's a couple books by local author at the time, Shirley Jackson. One is Hang the Man. This one is loosely based on Paula Weldon and Shirley Jackson's time at being in college. So she took that real life Paula Weldon case and her college experience and threw it into a book. Interesting enough. Now, this one, when it comes to Martha Jeanette Jones, I feel like this story right here, the missing girl, is inspired by this missing person case, not Paula Weldon, which is what some people claim that the missing girl short story is based off of Paula Weldon. But after reading it myself, I am 99.9% comfortable to say that this is actually about Martha Jeanette Jones. And that is because in this book or short story, she talked about like a high school girl, not a college girl, which is what Paula Weldon was. But anyway, Martha Jeanette Jones was what the newspapers called. Now, this is not my word. This is the newspaper's word. A attractive 16-year-old high school girl that went missing. I just want to stop there for a minute, and I just want to say, back in the day of Bennington, this is not the first time that I've seen the newspapers when it came to a missing lady, or in this case, a missing teenager, that they used the word attractive. It makes me
It's
wonder
just
why.
weird. It's kind of
Yeah,
weird.
yeah. Anyway, that's my pet peeve there. That is all about. But anyway, yeah. So Martha Jeanette Jones lived in Bonneville, Vermont, which is like about a 20-minute drive from Manchester Center. And what happened was he didn't want to go to school or was on school vacation or something. And she was walking from Bonneville to Manchester Center. But instead of just walking all the way, she wanted to hitchhike. So from that point on, that's where she vanished because of the hitchhiking. Ironically enough, the first time the newspaper article mentioned anything about her disappearing was 10 days later. So November 16th is when the first newspaper article goes into play. Now, I just want to stop right there for a minute and go back to Paul Jepson because remember I said he went missing on October 12th, and then literally a day later, October 13th, it's right in the newspaper saying that this boy, 8 years old, is already missing. And now here we are in November of the same year, and 10 days later is when she basically notified by her parents or school or friends. They didn't say who really claimed her missing, but it gets weirder. So anyway, from the hitchhiking, that's the point where she basically vanished, and that's it for the time being. Now, fast forward a month later, when we're in December, the police reached out to a possible claim that they had found, or that the people who actually picked Martha Jeanette Jones up basically said, "Yo, yeah, we picked her up from when she was hitchhiking from Bonneville to go to Manchester Center." However, they didn't drive to Manchester Center. Instead, somehow the chat basically, I don't even know a good term for this, Jeremy, so maybe you might know one better. But from her getting picked up by this couple, which their names were Mr. and Mrs. Truman Mowry, and somehow they went from Manchester all the way to, you might have to help me here. I'm trying to figure out if I'm even pronouncing this right. But Rhinebeck, New York? Or Rhinebeck, maybe? But
Reinvent,
anyway,
maybe. Yeah, I'm not
yeah.
100% on that.
So they literally drove her all the way into New York. And from there, that's where they dropped her off. So somehow, between New York, she ended up maybe hitchhiking all the way down to Virginia. Now, I'm not even going to try to attempt the town name of Virginia where she was located by the authorities of Virginia, but when authorities did find her, she had started a job as a waitress in a restaurant in Virginia, and the authorities did arrest her and they brought her in, and then they informed the Vermont State Police that they had found her and that her parents can come and pick her up. Funny thing enough, or ironically, or maybe red flag or something, is that her parents didn't want to go and get her from Virginia. They just kind of just said, nah, we ain't going to pick her up. So because of that, Vermont State Police basically just rang back to the Virginia police who had her in custody and basically said, just let her go. But
Mm.
just in case I didn't say it, which I don't think I did, but she was under a different name. So she was no longer Martha Jeanette Jones. She went under Joe Ann Winters. That was her new name in Virginia. In my own opinion, it sounds like there was some sort of bad family relationship in Vermont. Therefore, she wanted to go start a whole new life. And with the reaction the parents kind of gave, I can see why. They didn't want to even go pick her up in custody all the way down in Virginia. That says a lot. Yeah. Yeah.
Now, not with this case, but with some of the other ones that we talked about, do you think that they're all connected, or is there Bennington Triangle kind of framing a convenient story that we've told ourselves?
So I just think it's not really connected, except for the fact it's just all in the same general area of the Triangle, because depending on even who you talk with when it comes to these cases, they will tell you that it goes into Massachusetts because Frida Wanger is from Massachusetts. You had Martha Jeanette Jones, who basically disappeared to New York, like I just said. And there's people talking about how it goes all the way to New Hampshire, which I can't really see that. But then I've also heard it goes all the way to Maine. So, but what I find interesting though is, and this is my cool little collectibles, but these are magazines from way back in the day, from like 1957 and December of 1957. Yeah. I can't see where this one. Oh, this is July 1957, just so you know. So anyway, two different magazines. This is the first time Shirley Jackson's short story there, The Missing Girl, was ever published, was in this little magazine, the magazine of fantasy and science fiction. It was December of 1957, if anybody wants to know. And then, ironically enough, 7 years after all these disappearances with the Bennington Triangle, at least the five main ones that everybody knows about, this magazine had mentioned a good amount of the missing people. There was actually a couple in here where I learned about for the first time because, to be honest, sometimes with the local books I have here, I kind of forget to skim through. But there was like another case in that they mentioned that was more south too about this lady that went out in the blistering or yeah, like a blistering storm of snow, like a blizzard, wearing nothing but like a skirt and like a skirt. And it's like, why would you do that? And that's a whole different case, man. But I know we're trying to talk about National Children Missing Day kind of thing,
Yeah, more
but
the children, yeah.
but dude, that case there is a whole I'm pretty sure the husband did it kind of thing. Because there's
Yeah.
way too many red flags in this one that I ended up diving down that rabbit hole of. But I just think when it comes to the Bennington Triangle, which was dubbed by local author Joseph Cicero back in '92 from the Vermont Public Radio, I personally think that it's not really connected as far as being tied to the triangle itself because some of the bodies have been found, but then I also think some of the stuff that we're reading is more of a work of a serial killer. And that's
So,
all I could probably say for now, but
yeah.
just because of other weird cases. So, like, maybe in a future appearance of me again, if you would like me back, it's like we can talk more of some other weird cases that kind of help cement why I say that.
Okay. Now, I think you did a documentary, if I remember correctly. Are you working on one? Or did I read that wrong?
What documentary? I don't know if I'm are you talking the From the Beyond one that
Yes, From the Beyond, yes.
yeah, so that's not mine. I
Oh,
was part of it.
part of it.
Yeah, I'm
Oh,
basically we're doing like what I'm doing with you, just being recorded to share my stories, knowledge about the missing people, stuff like that.
okay. I,
Yeah,
I wanted to ask about it at least to see what it was all about. And
it's Small Town Monsters' latest release is called From the Beyond, a High Strangeness in the Bennington Triangle. So it's out now on everywhere streaming wise. If you have Amazon Prime, you can watch it for free right now. Tubi, it's gonna land on Tubi in August, from what I heard. And if you want to get actual copies, like I have, it's only exclusive on smalltownmonster.com. But I'm in it
okay,
for a minute and 10 seconds to share my little knowledge about the missing people and stuff like that.
okay. And now, for people that don't know, you created Haunted Vermont. What is it? What is it, and how did it get started?
Yeah, so Haunted Vermont started after the paranormal group I was in, or we were in. I don't even know how to word it anymore, but basically it went on hiatus, and I didn't really want to stop learning about my state when it came to the paranormal, especially with the strange experiences I had prior before starting groups and stuff like that. But well, basically, it was started back in August 26th of 2012. So what is that? Almost 14 years now. And
Yeah,
I have a cat on my shoulder, so I apologize for.
well, it's all right.
I just wanted to learn and just try to keep going with maybe my own little solo investigations and stuff because I just felt like I wanted to see what else was out there, especially in the weird, bizarre areas of Bennington Triangle area because it is weird, and I just wanted to see what else there is to maybe help with my knowledge of the unknown. And what I mean by that is going to certain places and just checking to see if with the environment itself or whatever kind of want to show me anything. I've been to Emily's Bridge and had experiences there. I've been to another cemetery. Let's see, this is 2026. So 2025, me and a guy went to this cemetery in New Haven, Vermont, which is right around Middlebury.
Yeah,
And because of it raining, I didn't record anything, but he had his phone on, which had this ghost app thing. And personally, when it comes to ghost apps, I don't really know how I feel about them. I just like, whatever. But what some of the stuff said on his phone made me want to look into it more after I had gotten back from this strange day out, basically. And basically, I learned that whatever was there was, or who was there, was actually legitimately buried there. And I didn't know that. So I wanted to figure out why this particular person was trying to reach out to me. And once I went down that rabbit hole of trying to find anything and everything, it was just like, oh my God. There was a lot of interesting things that were said that ended up getting found from ancestry.com and newspapers.com and stuff like that. So it was just like, holy crap. Like, but that's a different story for maybe another time. But yeah, that's pretty much haunted Vermont in a nutshell. It's just I want to collect story while also being able to try to find the meat of the stories. Like I was just mentioning with this story where the environment was trying to get my attention with these names in some bin. And what I mean by that is at the time, the phone app thing said 19. I didn't know what that meant. But when I looked into it, it was weird because just I'll leave this as a little teaser for maybe next time. But when I looked at or when I found the information about this person, she had died on January 19th, 1852, at the age of 19. So that's where I figured that's where 19 came into play. Was her age or possibly January 19th, or if
Yeah,
not both. So 19 came into play a few times. So it was just weird. And, but it just got more weirder with some of the responses as well as it kind of went on. But yeah, maybe that could be like another chat later on down the road or something.
yeah. Also, Vermont's paranormal history has its own kind of feel. How would you describe what makes it a little bit different than other places?
Because you just don't know what you're gonna run into, man. So I'll share this. Maybe this might help describe like what I'm talking about too. Like down in Bennington, and I've never heard this from the locals themselves, and this is a fun fact too. So it kind of helps tie in to the documentary that we were just talking about that I appear in and stuff like that. So back last year when I was doing the recording for the documentary, I had finished it, and about a couple weeks later, or a week or so later, it was July 4th, and I wanted to just take a moment and basically go back there because I haven't been to this hidden graveyard in this Bennington Woodford area for what would that have been, like 12 years. So I wanted to go back to see if I could refine it and try to do some EVP work, EMF work again because it's just been that long. And I
Yeah.
also remembered that it was a stretch to find it last time, and now it was like a piece of cake. But what happened was I went so far that the woods started to almost make me it feel like it would drawn me more into the woods because like my GPS on my phone was not working at all. Like it
Eh,
was trying to show me like I was possibly going the right way, but it didn't feel like it. It was almost like it was reversed or something. It was very weird. And what should have been like a short find of the hidden grave turned into 5.5 hours before
oh,
finding the grave. And it just got to the point where I was so deep in the woods that I literally looked at my phone because I couldn't trust it anymore. And I just put it in my pocket and I just said, all right, Boy Scout instinct, let's go. So I literally was just tracking through these woods off the trail. And I was just like, I'm just going to walk this way until I find the trail and then I'm just going to get back on it because that whatever was going on, it has something to do with like compasses or the GPS. And I wasn't the only one that experienced something like this down in Bennington. The people in Small Town Monsters all experienced this weird vortex, this weird time thing where it just felt like it was dragging and going on and on, like a never-ending vortex, basically. Now, for I guess a little teaser. Now, fast forward to when I actually was able to finally see the documentary the first time before it actually came out into the public. There's a guy in the documentary by the name Andy Curtis who had something similar happen to him. And that's when I
Oh,
was just like, wow. And I didn't know he was part of it either, but it was just funny because that kind of happened to me. So,
yeah.
so there's definitely something going on in Vermont, man. Whether it be in going all the way up north, where supposedly back in like 1962 or something, there was something called the invasion of the UFO invasion of Richford or something, or somewhere around Richford. This farmer or somebody was basically claiming like a invasion of UFO back in like the 1950s and then talked about it in 1962 or something like that. It's
Yeah.
all weird and bizarre one way or another. And plus it's technically, if you want to get more technical, we got Lake Champlain where I had Champ or Champion.
Champy champ.
And then you got talk about how Lake Champlain is a home for a underground UFO base because supposedly people have claimed to have seen UFO come in and out of Lake Champlain. There's, dude, I
I
mean,
Oh,
there's
I
a
know there's
lot.
tons. What did I hear? And I don't know. I didn't actually get to fact check it. And I'd never heard it growing up in Montgomery, but in Berkshire, which is right next to Montgomery, I heard that there used to be sightings of a pterodactyl back in like the early 1900s, late 1800s.
Oh, I wonder if that's what they called the awful.
It probably is. I had never growing up, and I never heard of that. So I'm not sure how true that is, but that was something that I did see on someone else's video on YouTube, but I don't know how factual or reliable that source is. But I thought it was interesting because I grew up at just like the next town over, and I'd never heard that.
Yeah, I should want to say that might be the one, if I'm thinking of the right one anyway, but they call that the awful.
It could be. Yeah.
But yeah, I've heard of it, but then again, I'm that guy now with that want to find the meat. If there's no
Yeah.
meat to it, then I
Yeah.
chop.
But like I said,
Uh,
I haven't looked into actually if there was like, you know,
any proof. Yeah.
proof. Yeah. I saw it on there. And I was like, I literally grew up in the next town and I never heard of it. I never heard that at all.
We could also throw in because of where you were, Montgomery. Montgomery is known for the Black Lantern Inn. I just forget why it's supposedly haunted, but we also know
Yes, I did hear that. I did hear that. Yes, the Black Lantern Inn, and so is the Inn on Trout River. I my aunt actually worked there and could verify that place was haunted.
which one, the Trout one or Black
Yes, the
Lantern?
Trout one.
Oh, okay.
The Inn on Trout River.
That's interesting. But so it's interesting because I guess real quick, this case is everywhere too. I feel like it is because when I posted about it on the, what was it, National Missing Person Day, maybe? Yeah, National Missing Person Day, I had shared this person's case because it's still cold and it's been, what, 22 years now, which is Brianna Maitland,
Yeah,
who went missing after getting out of work, and she was working at the Black Lantern Inn. And it's just
yes,
what was going on back then. And don't even get me started on her case, man. Even the first 45 minutes of how that went down, especially after midnight, of the first cop to be off duty but arrived on scene to see the car but didn't really do anything.
yeah,
That just pisses me off. I'll just say that. Wow. Talk about not doing a cop duty job right and finding it
yeah.
more suspicious than what it was. Or
I'm not going to dive too much into that one only because I do know some of the people involved in that. So growing up in that area, I do know some of so I won't go into too much into that.
hey, man, I was in Richford in 2007 and I never heard anything about it from any of the locals. That should say something too.
Yeah. So I did want to explore a couple more questions for you. I wanted to hear is your most credible personal experience that you've had that you can't explain?
So I don't have proof to this because I was so young. The only thing is I have my friend still that could back me up with this. And that would be his old farmhouse of the Thomas Dairy Farm. I know probably if any listeners have heard the story, it's just because it's one of my absolute favorites. Because it's one of those stories where I cannot tell you what happened because every time you try to look at it for a logical explanation, there's none. And that is, it was my friend Justin's birthday weekend, and it was a couple of us, and I just learned too that there was actually another person there, but they weren't in his room with us. He actually slept in a different bedroom, which is probably why I don't recall this person. So anyway, to make it short and sweet, is we all went to bed that night. So my friend's way out, just real quick, is his bed was right up against the window, and that's important. It's because he can't, if he were to get up for this example real quick, he wouldn't be able to because the window, he's like right against that wall, right by that window. So I just want to make that perfectly clear. So we had another smaller friend that was in the middle of us, and I was on the edge of the bed, facing the floor, toward the floor, basically. And what happened was during the night is we all basically were moved. And by the time we woke up, we were in different places and we were all staring at each other going, what happened? Can we have any type of logical explanation for this?
Yeah.
But so I was at the window so I would move from the edge of the bed to the window where my friend Justin was. Justin was one that I recall most. He recalled a different one, but I remember the one where he was on the floor, tucked underneath the bed, which was weird enough. So that's how far he would moved. But our friend who was in the middle was where I was.
Yeah.
Now I know that sounds completely out of this world, but we all looked at each other and said, none of us got up in the middle of the night. No. Okay, which fact check something? If Justin were to have gotten up, even though he was right up against the window, he would have had to army crawl down the side of his bed, which that's movement. That's going to shake the bed a little bit. We're going to feel that. Didn't even feel
Yeah.
that. Otherwise, he could have, let's see, flopped the covers up off of him, which therefore the cover would have hit Ethan, who was in the middle. So we would have felt it no matter what, that like the covers moved, whether it be like maybe wind or something blowing onto me, even like the wind effect of something moving. And then from there, if he didn't army crawl, then he would have had to have carefully have tried to step over Sin and myself while not falling and smacking his head off something or dive bombing onto the ground and causing a more bigger whatever. And then you got Ethan that I could have flattened him as a pancake, let's be honest, to get over to the window and stuff like that. But yeah, either way,
It-
we have never been able to figure out how that was
How
possible.
that happened?
Yeah.
It's strange. Yeah. But also, one of the things one other question before we wrap up, of all the different haunted places in Vermont, which one is that you think should get more attention?
Should get more attention. Oh man, that's hard for me now because a lot of places that used to be around are not around anymore. So
Yeah.
that's what sucks. And to be frank, I have no idea how to answer that because Emily's Bridge is so popular now.
Yeah.
Wilson Castle is starting to get popular
I
now.
love Wilson's Castle. I was there last
And
October.
Oh,
Love it.
I'll never forget the experience I had at Wilton Castle the first time I went there.
Oh, I had one too. Mine was in the pink room. I don't know if you know where the pink room is in
Yep.
Wilson's Castle, but mine was there.
I can't even keep track of all the awesome ones that happened that night. I guess I will say for one of the best ones would have to be when we were all in Sarah's room and we had no like spirit box running or anything. So nice and quiet. And it was just mainly us trying to feel the environment. And all of a sudden, this disembodied voice in real time came out of nowhere and just goes, hello. And it's just, that's my first time I ever heard a disembodied voice in real life without having a piece of device. So that
Yeah.
blew my mind. So, yeah. So Wilson Castle will always have that part for
Yeah.
me. Otherwise, man, it's just I don't know how to. If it was still around, I would say maybe Silas Griffiths in if it was still around, but it's not.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. How can people find you if they would like to follow you? Or I think you do a podcast as well. So
Yep.
how can they find your podcast? How can they follow you and all of that?
All the information for Haunted Vermont, whether it be even the podcast or everything, can all be found at hauntedvermont.org, O-R-G. I do try to do my best to post on there for some of the weird stuff that I come across to find like the meat of the bones. I love to throw that in articles. Every time we do a new podcast episode, it's all there too. So I really just think the website is your go-to all information.
Okay. Yeah, I'll make sure I put that in the description below so that if anyone wants to go check that out and check out all the stuff that you're doing on there, they can do that. Paul, this was a great conversation, and I thank you for coming on.
Thank you for
Um,
having me.
oh, not a problem. And if you're new here, hit the subscribe button, ring the bell so you never miss an episode. Every week, we go deeper into the places where history and the paranormal collide. I will put hauntedvermont.org in the description below. Go check out his work and all of that. And if you want to keep digging in the dark with us, I do have a Discord. It's new. I'll put the description in the description below. Check out my merchandise. I'll have some new merchandise out, and that'll be there as well. Until next time, the past may be gone, but its spirits live on. Keep digging into the darkness.